You're with Julian on the brown note on the cusp of World War III. A review of Sinners, the latest film by Ryan Coogler, who made a very good film called Fruitvale Station, which I gave 9 out of 10 to, and did a very passable job at rebooting Rocky with Creed. But honestly, I thought Black Panther stinks up every list of best superhero movie. I saw a list recently that had like The Dark Knight below it. For me, Black Panther was always an upper mid-tier MCU film. Probably 6.5 out of 10 worthy. A lot of it was very clunky, quite cheesy actually. And some of the stuff that happened, like the battle, the CGI, worst CGI battle in the whole of MCU, and a very cheesy ending. And Black Panther 2 was absolutely horrendous. It was an awful film. But he's got this cachet with the critics somehow that makes him, the savant of Black American cinema. I thought Fruitvale Station was an excellent film, but I don't think anything else has been. But Sinners has been the most acclaimed major release film of the year. It set many records for an original intellectual property rather than a remake or reboot or something that has already existed in the past being redone in some form or other. As far as the box office gross goes, it's set several records for an original piece. It stars Michael B. Jordan, his go-to actor. I think he was even in Fruitvale Station, as twins in sort of like the 40s in America, I guess, or maybe even the 30s, who are ex-Chicago mobsters that come back to their hometown with a lot of money in their pocket and with the notion of opening a juke joint. 1932. And they both fought in World War I, and they've come back to Clarksdale in Mississippi to open a juke joint with their bankroll. And a juke joint is the places like Alabama and Mississippi where black bluesmen would play, and mainly black clientele would come and drink and do whatever. And there were black-owned businesses back then. And I've played Junior Kimbrough on this show a lot. He was someone that ran a juke joint all the way through to the 1990s. His juke joint compared to the one in this film is like comparing a small park to Disneyland. This is a multi-million-dollar juke joint, if ever there was one. And of course, the term juke joint, when they tragically started replacing the live bluesmen with machines that played records, they became called juke boxes and so on. The opening half of this film is superb. Like, the setup is wonderful. And at this stage, I felt like the Michael Jordan characters were actually separate. I must admit, as the film progressed, I kind of just mashed them into the same one, into some form of Jamie Foxx. So they try and set up their thing, and they get this their cousin, who is a savant on the guitar and as a singer, who is played by, and he's got like the voice is superb, Michael Caton as Sammy Moore, who is, the characters are called Elijah Smoke Moore and Elias Stack Moore, and their cousin is a very gifted guitarist and singer. Now, this has famously been compared to... So, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about the plot because it's a bit impossible, and it's been out for months now, and it's coming on streaming. So, I am spoiling the plot here, but if you manage to avoid it, this is a Dusk Till Dawn scenario, which is the first half of the film happens centered around a bar, and the second half of the film sees vampires appear. So it's like a cross-genre mashup. And the second half of the film is battling vampires. Ironically, Dusk Till Dawn I've never regarded as a classic. But I feel the same about this, which is I thought the first half of the film was actually really good. And everything kind of went a bit downhill when the vampires appeared. So there's lots of side characters. Haley Steinfeld plays one of the twins' ex-girlfriend, who turns up in to their bar and is absolutely detested by one of the twins, the ex-boyfriend. It's never really, I don't think it's really explained why she's so detested, because for the rest of the film she seems to be a completely nice person. And the other twin's ex-wife, played by Wumi Masako, is a hoodoo, a relation, I guess, a voodoo practitioner. And it's shown that her abilities as a sorceress weren't enough to save their own child, and that's what led to them being disenfranchised. There's a lot of setup in that first half of the film. Honestly, that's not really followed through that well. The whole production design, the cinematography, the sound, again by long-term collaborator from Sweden, no less. The cinematography by Autumn Gerald Archipel, and the music is superb by Ludwig Göransson, who's worked on most of the Coogler films. It's an incredibly intoxicating mash of styles of music that would have been relevant at the time, rather than just using, here's an orchestra, do your score. It's much more interesting than that. There are, in fact, two musical numbers in this film which are outstanding. One is the black one, which we see in the juke joint, which is a just mesmerising use of camera work and sound. It's incredible. And I hate musicals, but I would happily see him do a musical if all of the scenes were like the two in this film. It's a very wild scene. And then we get the white one. So we get these white vampires turn up to the juke joint. They can play instruments too. There's kind of a metaphor here about white people taking black music and owning it, I felt. And I think that's pretty obvious, but like most of the big ticket items that this film presents, I don't feel it follows through on them. So we get these white musicians who are all vampires turn up and want to come in, and they love the music and they want to play, and they get their own musical sequence, which is equally at times laugh out loud silly, but then pulls itself back to being kind of epic. Both those sequences are superb. And the whole, the production design is fantastic. It looks beautiful. It will certainly be nominated for a huge number of Oscars, because on the technical side, it's going to get nominated up the wazoo. And then we get the idea that these vampires... What I love most about this film is the way that it presented vampires not as evil. They're like, I love the way that it uses the vampire notion of, we can't come into your home until you invite us. I thought that was really funny, the way that they're just like hanging outside going, go on, let us in. But the other thing that I really loved about it was the way that they presented the vampires as not evil, but saying, come and join us. We have a really good time. Everyone's welcome with us. And they mean it. They're like, no, this is great. We just hang around all the time. And I really like that side of it. And some of the vampire stuff is visually beautiful. And the guy that plays the lead vampire, because he's so, makes some really good points. It's Jack O'Connell, who's a British actor, I think. He plays the lead vampire, and they go around trying to infect everyone from the bar and basically turning them all into their own clan. But one really strong plot element was, he's been alive for centuries, and there's this notion of musicians that are so good that they draw spirits from different time zones to come to hear this heavenly music. And the twins' cousin is one such person capable of making this music that will drag spirits from the past and the future into this world. And the lead vampire, Remick, has been alive so long, he's desperate to talk to people from his past. So he wants to turn the young cousin who's a musician, into a vampire so that he can play this music and he can converse with the people that he hasn't spoken to for hundreds of years. That's a really good element. Now, the second half of the film, which is nowhere near as constructed as well as the first half, is your typical Dusk Till Dawn vampire thing. And the big problem I have with these is, we're told that vampires are, incredibly powerful entities, strong and so on, and live for hundreds of years. And So why is it members of the public can kill hundreds of them? Every single film like this, it's just like, you know, it's going to be a bloodbath, and you know that a certain number of people are going to exist at the end, and that all becomes very redundant. And I also get offended by the fact, you know, sunlight kills them in a split second. You think people that had lived for hundreds of years would have some way of factoring that into their behaviour? Do they not have watches? Because it's every time it's the same, isn't it? There's, you know, let's keep them here till dawn. Oh, dawn's going to save us. The biggest misstep in this film is the Ku Klux Klan. At the start, it's kind of toyed with that the Ku Klux Klan exist and are in the area, but then at the end, they have the whole vampire sequence, and then they go, "Oh yeah, the Ku Klux Klan are all coming to kill you," and they have a shootout, and it was just like, it was so out of nowhere and meant nothing. It was just such a pointless exercise. The very end I did really like. There was, because it sucker punched me, which is, you see, it winds forward to the 1990s, and you see Buddy Guy, the real legendary bluesman, you know, playing the blues, but it's horrible. He's not touching his guitar. It's like in the 80s, I hated the blues because it was all that white boy in a trench coat with sunglasses playing this horribly sanitized version of the blues, and they don't go through that. But then they flip to Buddy Guy sitting in a chair with a guitar, an acoustic guitar, playing the real thing, and I really appreciated that. I thought, oh, that was done deliberately. I thought that was an excellent way to end it, and it was kind of, you know, the way the vampires come and meet him at the end as well. I kind of like the idea, because the unspoken thing about vampire stories and vampire TV shows and movies is that we all want to be one. It's inconvenient, isn't it? The idea of eternal life and, you know, would thou like to live deliciously? The famous finale of the movie The Witch, where she went, actually, I'm going to be a witch. This is horrible, this life. I'm just going to go and be a witch instead. I think a lot of us feel that way about vampires, and the vampires in this film being not really that evil, but, you know, just come and play with us. We're great. I'd like that. But the idea, this film's got like 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, 84% on Metacritic, which is incredibly high because that's an average score, and people claiming it to be a modern masterpiece. It is not. In fact, I'm sure I'm not alone in that I would have much rather this film had continued the story about the juke joint, which was so well made and put together and left so many things hanging, and it would then never really developed, including the characters, and just not had the vampire stuff. If there was an overriding metaphor about white people being vampires to black culture, I get that. But it does end up with half the film being, and it's quite low, it's like nearly 2.5 hours, half the film being those vampire attacks where so many people get killed, it just becomes redundant. And it was messy from that point on. So I'm in two minds about this. I think, you know, the critical response to this has been very similar to Black Panther, which is when I actually watched it, I was like, this isn't even in the top 10 MCU films. But everyone says it is actually the best. And everyone's saying this is the best film of the year, but it is not. It's a very good watch. It's beautifully made. The filmmaking technique of Ryan Coogler is incredible. Acting-wise, I didn't really rate Michael B. Jordan in this. He gives like the kind of performance you'd expect from Jamie Foxx in a rote film. There's a couple of people that stand out a little bit, but I wouldn't say that anyone was great. The music is outstanding, the cinematography is outstanding, and the overall production design is outstanding. But it does, you know, I don't know if I'd go back and watch it again, to be honest. I wanted that whole 1930s prohibition juke joint story to progress without any vampires in it. So a strong 7 out of 10 for Sinners, but no way is it a masterpiece.